We are delighted to have you all in Colombo at the 3rd International Conference 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, in this session over the next 2 hours, we will have the privilege of having 6 dignitaries sharing their knowledge, insights on red hot and trending key priorities of real estate management and valuation. Before we get started, I would like to go through the purpose of this session. This session aims to feature a presentation on latest development projects in Sri Lanka and share knowledge on latest real estate topics, followed by a question and answer session at the end. Now I would like to kickstart today's event by introducing the respected dignitaries. Our first dignitary is a chartered valuation surveyor, a former chief valuer of the Government Valuation Department, Sri Lanka. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. P.W. Jayewardenepura. Next, I would like to move to our second dignitary, the Chairman of Urban Development Authority, President, the Institute of Town Planners in Sri Lanka, a Chartered Architect, Town Planner, and the 2019 Real Estate Personality of the Year. Please give it up for Dr. Jagat Munasinghe. Next, we have 2 guest speakers who will be doing 2 presentations. First, please welcome the Project Director, Colombo Light Rail Transit Project, Engineer Chaminda Aryadasa, and the Senior Project Specialist, Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, Sri Lanka, Mrs. Namal Ralapanawa. Next, I would like to invite the Project Manager, ICTA, Mr. Buddhika Ratnapala. And we have an online presentation. I would like to introduce a resource person, the Chief Executive Officer, Castle Coin Fractional Real Estate, Melbourne, Australia, Mr. James Lynch. Once again, I welcome you all and thank you for coming here to grace this event today. But before commencing the presentations, allow me to go through the topics of today's presentations: the future of valuation, the future developments of Sri Lanka and the role of planning intervention, the Colombo Light Rail Transit Project, land information system for Colombo municipality area, and blockchain technology. So it's quite an interesting itinerary we have ahead, and we hope that this session would be informative at the same time, full of learning for all of you. So for the first presentation, I call upon Mr. P.W. Jayewardenepura to deliver his presentation on the future of valuation.
The topic assigned to me is the future of valuation. Of course, to talk on future of valuation, I am a bit lucky because about 30 minutes back, you listened to the presentation made by Professor On Su Eng, National University of Singapore, in his keynote speech. He came out with PropTech, X-Value AVM, automated valuation models, and also X-Drones, the latest technologies used in valuation field and also in real estate field. So I think part of my lecture he has already covered. But anyway, I like to discuss with you or present to you about the future of valuation. Don't know whether I have to talk on future of valuation in Sri Lanka or else in the international arena. However, if I talk on the history of valuation in Sri Lanka, our valuation unit in the General Treasury started far back in 1922. And as a revenue unit in the General Treasury. And of course, the Government Valuation Department started in 1939, and we are still doing our valuation for the country based on various developments taken place in international arena. However, to talk on the future, I should talk on the past and the present. But I do not want to explain much, talk much on past and the future, past and the present, but I like to deal with you, to discuss with you about the developments taken place in developed countries. History of the valuation profession in US, the valuation profession is a United States perspective. They have categorized the valuation eras. They have 4 categories, all measured on how data is used. Really speaking, data is the very important thing for valuation. Everything in the property management, even valuation, everything depends on data. Based on the data, how they utilized, they have divided the history into 4 eras, that is the data rummage era, that is 1920 to 1970, where they were searching for data. Randomly, here and there they collected data and used them for valuation purpose, searching for data. And the second era comes to the market analysis. Plenty of data is there in the market. They collected comparable data, they collected data and analyzed and selected 3 to 6 comparables to do the valuation. That's the era from 1980 to 1990. Then the third era, the data discarding era. By that time, so many data were there in the open market, and they were there already collected and computerized, and they have their data banks. What they did was, they got 3 to 6 comparables again. They found the best comparables for them to do the valuation, and they discarded other data as they are not valuable for their purpose. So, ladies and gentlemen, the fourth one is the data optimization era. That is 2010 to present. Mind you, for this valuation, all the changes taken in the history, demographics, regulations, and technology are very, very important. So, there are 3 main issues concerning the future of valuation. First one is the technological development. Second one is changing client expectations. Third one is changing regulatory environment. When we talk on the first one, the technological development, 4 methods are very, very important. First one is the big data. The second one is blockchain. Third one is artificial intelligence, that is called AI. And the fourth one is automated valuation models. Ultimately, this AI and AVMS are connected to each other, and we do the valuation based on those two. One. You can imagine the technological development in the world. The Kodak was sunk by the creative destruction of the digital camera. So, still is developing. And also the Apple rose on the wave of change and evolved from the maker of small personal computers to the iPod and ultimately to mobile devices like iPhones. So, the changing client expectations, of course, now they are not satisfied with the present value of a property. They are thinking of long-term value of properties because for the investment purposes, long-term sustainability, how this value will be there in the open market for a long term. So to do that, we need data. To predict that, we need data. So that's the important thing there. And the third one is the change in regulatory environment. So generally, always there are monitoring bodies like RICS or even American Appraisers Institute or even our Sri Lanka Valuation Institute of Sri Lanka. Our regulatory bodies are there. Time to time they evolve, they develop various rules and regulations to control the profession. Then generally there are 6 recommendations of valuers in America, US. They say embrace technology, how data is gathered and increased use of AVMs, automated valuation models. Then they enhance the client experience, experimentation with new ways of reporting. Instead of giving the report on paper, other devices developed. Third one is ensure independence and objectivity. So they say, as professionals we know, without independence and objectivity, there cannot be trust in valuation. That's very important. Then beware of liability. I don't know up to what extent our professional valuers in our country have taken this into account, the liability of doing valuations. Liability needs to be linked with risk and rewards. Then the reduced time scale, digitization. By the digitization, time is reduced. The reduced time scale should not compromise quality. Although in a fingertip we could get the data for evaluation, always it says, don't reduce the quality of your end product. 6th one is update your skill set. To go with the current developments in the field, to go with the current technological development, always, as valuers, you have to update your skill set in various ways. Otherwise, you may not be able to survive in this developing professional technological background. So, that's the situation in America or US. Then we are very acquainted with RICS, Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. On this future of valuation, they made a RICS future report and published in 2015, April. In that report, they begins with, disintermediation triggered by access to information and the processing of technology is causing parts of agency, brokerage, valuation, and cost estimation roles to take on more service than advisory-based approach. So all the valuers are changing from service-based to advisory-based. So that's what in this report says. In red, Quest will say, a kid with a smartphone has more intelligent access to knowledge than the President of the United States 20 years ago. So that's the technological development in every field nowadays. Data and valuation. The data are the world's most valuable resource. Data already plays a central role in the real estate sector and the valuation process. We need to understand the role of data and challenges in gathering it, namely quality, sources, and processing. So this quality is very important, quality of data. Then the sources from which we have gathered data, generally we collect direct sources are there, also indirect sources are also there. And also the processing is very important. What do you mean by processing? Verifying, qualifying, classifying, calculating, and analyzing data. That's very important. It's a normal rule in computer world, garbage in, garbage out. Therefore, you have to be very careful when you are analyzing data, verifying, qualifying, and classifying, calculating, and analyzing data. So, now as I said, the technological development, the four things are big data. The big data is defined as data sets too large or complex that traditional data processing applications are inadequate. Often, big data is further defined using a number of V's. The 7 V's of big data is volume, velocity, variety, variability, veracity, visualization, and value. So generally the big data is based on these 7 V's. What's the effect of big data to valuers? Big data could augment human expertise, not replace it. Although the data is there, it will not replace the valuer, but it will assist the valuer. Currently, a valuer spends a significant amount of time on data-related work compared to other aspects of the valuation process. Big data could reverse this. On the other hand, big data could mean that in the future, less valuers will be needed to perform the same job. That's the future. Finally, the ultimate question was raised. Who in the end will analyze all this information and how will this be done? There you see, currently this role remains human, but recent progress in artificial intelligence may change this in future. Because artificial intelligence is similar to the human intelligence. So that will affect on the future of valuation again. Currently, big data is an unfinished, constantly changing umbrella concept, but is developing fast and has great potential for the real estate sector and valuations. So ladies and gentlemen, the second one is the blockchain. ABN AMRO says the potential of blockchain lies in the fact that trust is built into the technology's design. What is blockchain? Blockchain is an algorithm based on procedure-based public ledger, where the transactions are recorded and confirmed anonymously. A decentralized asset database that can be shared across the network of sites, geographies, or institutions requiring no third-party involvement. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a presentation, I think, online presentation here about blockchain. Therefore, I do not wish to explain blockchain much. Then the artificial intelligence and automated valuation. AI, artificial intelligence, can learn from previous situations to provide input and automate complex future decisions process, making it easier and faster to arrive at concrete conclusions based on data and past experience. That's the World Economic Forum. It says like that. So, artificial intelligence, how we apply them in valuation. AI valuation applications take inputs from many disparate sources and through an evolution process generate algorithms that output valuations. These are tested against non-good valuations to appraise the weighting of the input multipliers. The AI accepts feedback, essentially the difference between the results and the correct answer, evolved in the algorithm hundreds of times until output closely resemble accepted valuation. At this point, this application could be ready to accept new instructions to value assets that have unknown valuations because it works together with the human brain. Then the AVM, the fourth one. The RIC's information paper automated valuation model is described as one or more mathematical techniques to provide an estimate of value of a specified property as a specified date, accompanied by a measure of confidence in the accuracy of the result without human intervention post-initiation. In practice, there's often an element of human interaction before and after, as an AVM can also be used to assist in qualified valuer in proceeding and estimation of value. So, the AVMs are currently used for portfolio valuation, valuation audit, and mortgage valuations. The consensus is that currently AVMs are most, if not exclusively, suitable for residential property valuations. Then a lot of developments have taken place in this technological era. Terms of engagement very easy. Online we can do that. Then the inspection, as Professor Singapore University explained, the drones are used. Then for external inspection, then the internal inspection also, you may be able to do something by using the iPhones. And also image streaming recording systems are there. Then the valuation report, clients may only be interested in two things, as all of us know, the final value and the signature. Technological developments such as videos, 3D visualization, heat mapping, and the use of virtual reality could have a positive impact in future valuations. Now, the conclusion, I like to say the technological development have an impact on valuation process and on the role of the valuer itself. Less time may be spent on investigation, inspection, and verifying and analyzing data AI develops. This may result in fewer valuers being needed to perform the same service to clients, or to valuers spending less time on individual valuations. That's the international situation. So, the US has faced a bigger problem with demographic factors. In 2007, they had a number of valuers, 98,450 valuers in that country. And by 2015, it has come down to 78,800. Not because of the technological development. The problem is people are not coming and most of the valuers are aging. Now, the reduction is 20%. They anticipate that that amount will come down again, very sharply decrease it because of the retirement of all valuers in the field. And just to have a look at the Sri Lanka situation, we have in the Institute of Valuers, we have 671 members. Over 80, we have 12. Between 70 to 80, we have about 103. And between 60 to 70, we have 69. Below 60, 487. Out of that, Government Valuation Department employed 359. And I think in local authorities, about 100 people, and others are in private practice. Other thing is, when you take the intake to the university, so 2016 and 17, the male 34, female 27, total 61. And in that year, the university that estate management faculty, the department has 109 male undergraduates, 125 female undergraduates, and total 234. So valuation is a field, mostly field job. Therefore, you have to think over these demographic variations also. So ladies and gentlemen, I think the time allocated me is already past. Therefore, I do not wish to talk much on this and look back where we are. I think, as all of you know, what is happening in valuation field and how we are doing things in this country, and still we are in the data rummage era. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your informative speech. Historically, real estate has lagged other industries when embracing innovation. Blockchain technology can potentially unlock value along every step of the real estate value chain. So to explain blockchain technology and real estate applications, we have our respected dignitary joining all the way from Australia. For that, I would like to invite Chief Executive Officer, Castle Coyle Fractional Real Estate, Melbourne, Australia, Mr. James Lynch.
Fantastic. Hello, Colombo, Sri Lanka. This is James Lynch coming to you from Melbourne, Australia. And thank you very much for letting me be part of your wonderful event. It really is an absolute true honour. So we really are at the beginning of a renaissance with respect to real estate and technology coming together. The influence that technology has had on the finance space, certainly over the last 15 or 20 years, has been immense. And we're really starting to see this begin to impact on real estate as well. A big part of this contribution with respect to, I suppose, prop tech and the technology's influence on real estate is being driven by this idea of blockchain. And it's going to form a really, really big part of record-keeping systems in the future. A little bit about myself. I've been involved in the finance, training, compliance, real estate investment space for around about 15 years. Anything and everything from education to investment. And in the last couple of years, I've had the privilege to be working on a project called Castlecoin, which allows investors to purchase small fractions of real estate assets, specific real estate assets, so a little bit different from a real estate investment trust. And our intention is to use blockchain technology to manage the record keeping and the systems attached to this particular platform. So really, as part of this, I've been able to be at the very forefront and accumulate quite a lot of research and a good understanding of blockchain and some of its applications with respect to real estate. And what I'd like to do today throughout the course of the presentation is explain to you the idea of blockchain. What is it? I'd like to explore the idea of smart contracts, which of course are synonymous with blockchain, and then finally explore some of the applications to real estate itself. Now really, the applications with respect to real estate are as broad and as far as your imagination will allow you to do, but as we'll find out, can be limited by the regulation and practicality and necessarily the need that operates in each and every jurisdiction. Of course, the operating conditions of real estate here in Australia would be very different to that in Sri Lanka, just as they would be in Africa, the US, UK, or just about anywhere around the world. So, without further ado, I'd like to start my presentation. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking at four key concepts: the idea of blockchain, the idea of smart contracts, digital tokens, and then finally some of the applications with respect to real estate. So let's start at the absolute very beginning. Blockchain is designed to record and distribute information without it being altered. And that really is one of the key things to come out of this. In many respects, blockchain is a modern database which is distributed and the information is recorded, not just on a single node or computer, but on a number of computers or nodes as they're referred to in the blockchain space. Blockchain as a record-keeping tool essentially is secure, transparent, and immutable. And this idea of immutability is something that we'll touch on in a couple of slides' time, and it really is one of the key characteristics that define blockchain. Blockchain itself, of course, is digitized. Many respects, and more often than not, is decentralized. And it can be public or private. So we can have what we call public blockchains, or we can have private blockchains. Public blockchains would, an example, of course, which most people are familiar with is Bitcoin, and we'll have a bit of a look at that later on. And then we can also have private blockchains, which private companies may use as an effective record-keeping tool for their particular needs. And network participants, those who are involved in the actual blockchain itself, can track transactions without the need for centralised record-keeping. So traditionally, say, in a finance space, you have a clearinghouse, which manages and clears transactions at the beginning or the end of it every day. With a blockchain, records are cleared in real time, and it's not by a central body that does it, but it's by all the nodes and network participants who are involved in running and maintaining that particular blockchain. So what is a blockchain in a really, really simple terms? The hint is in the name. It's a chain of blocks. And a block really is a body of information, okay? A blockchain itself is constantly growing as one block of information is attached to the next, and so on and so forth. And in the diagram up there in front of you, we obviously have a number of blocks. And what's really important to understand about a blockchain and this idea of immutability, which I touched on earlier, is that the information in one block also includes information from the previous block, meaning that they're linked and interdependent, okay? So each block or body of information that is committed to a blockchain contains information of the previous block, and so on and so forth. So what that means is we can't actually go back in time and adjust information in a ledger without it having an effect on the actual current ledger itself. So for example, if we were to go back and say change information on number 1, it would have an effect on block number 11. And what that means is the network participants, those who are involved in managing and maintaining the information in the blockchain, wouldn't actually be able to verify that the information is true and correct. And the next block wouldn't be able to be added to the blockchain because the information couldn't be verified, because it would pick up an anomaly in changes in subsequent information. And that's really where the cleverness and security and the immutability of a blockchain comes from. In really simple terms, another image that I have up there is a ledger, and this is going back hundreds and hundreds of years. And there was a mathematician by the name of Luca Pacioli, and this was during the Renaissance period. And he was actually a mathematician, and he came up with this idea of what we know today as double entry bookkeeping and record keeping. And in observing the merchants of Venice at the time, he noticed that they had 2 sets of ledgers recording the transactions of the merchants. And what they would do is they would marry those ledgers up at the end of the day to ensure that the information was true and correct. And then by by cross-referencing, he could then identify any anomalies and then follow them up. In simple terms, really basic terms, a blockchain does just this, but rather than just having 2 ledgers, it can have hundreds, if not thousands of these ledgers all around the world, which have to marry up and ensure that the information that is committed to them is in fact true and correct. So I've talked a lot about the idea of a block. Now I'm going to use the example of Bitcoin, and it's really, really important for me to let you know right now. Bitcoin is not blockchain. What Bitcoin is, though, is an application of blockchain technology, okay? And it really is the one that people are most familiar with, going right back to 2009. And since then, since its inception, since the genesis or the first block, it's been a really, really successful example. So if you actually cast your eyes to the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see all of the information that's included. In particular, at the top, you'll see the number of transactions. Okay, so this would be Bitcoins, which have been transferred between multiple parties. So we can see that there's been 2,227 transactions between parties. Okay, we can see the date or the time when this block was created. We can see how big it was, what volume of Bitcoins were transferred in this. But what's really important, if you cast your eyes to the right-hand side, you can see the hash and the hash of the previous block. And this is where this idea of containing information from the previous block is actually committed to the subsequent block, and so on and so forth. And this is where this concept of interdependence between blocks really comes to life. So what you can see is that you're actually not able to change the information in this particular block without affecting the hash, which really is kind of a digital signature of the previous block. So to continue on from that, another key component is the idea of decentralization, okay, and of course record keeping. Now the blockchain itself and all the information, as I alluded to earlier, is stored on multiple nodes. Another example I have here on the left, okay, as you can see on the outside, represents the nodes or the computers which are recording this information. Each node gets a full copy of that ledger, And the real advantage of this is that there's no single point of failure. So even if one or two of these particular computers or record-keeping systems or nodes was to go down, we can rely on the fact that we've still got lots of other nodes, depending on the size of our network, still running this ledger. So there's a real advantage to that. And then a final thing, of course, is then transactions between entities are automatically recorded, and they can be automated. And they've done this by way of a smart contract, which we'll explore a little bit later on. To bring the idea of decentralization to life, and again, I'm going to lean on the Bitcoin network, is you can see this map here in front of you. And this actually gives us a bit of a heat map of where all of the nodes around the world are operating at this point in time. So as you can see, all the way from Northern America, South America, Europe, China, looks like we've also got sort of Sri Lanka and India there, and of course Australia. So as you can see, this idea of decentralization is happening to the absolute nth degree, which is really exciting. And of course, it provides a real element of security. If worst was to happen, if all the power was to go out in the United States of America all at the same time, we would have that assurance that the network is still being recorded, run and maintained in all other parts of the world. So the next concept that I would like to touch on is this idea of smart contracts. And smart contracts are really synonymous with blockchain. And really it's self-governing and self-executing contracts and allow transactions between parties without the requirement for third parties to manage them. So quite often, particularly, if we're dealing with people overseas or whatever it may be, we usually have intermediaries by way of agents who will assist in managing the transaction, say, between party A and party B. The nice thing is with blockchain technology and the implementation of smart contracts, we don't necessarily need that, okay? What's great is, and they often work on a if and then structure, okay? So if the terms of the condition are met, if the terms of the contract are met in such a way, then execute the following, okay? As part of that, we can include escrow accounts, and what we can transfer between parties could be digital currency, digital tokens that represent both real, okay, intangible, and digital assets. There's security attached to them, of course, as well. So for parties to interact with smart contracts, they need to have a digital key and, of course, have the authorization to do so. And certainly on public networks, there's an ability for those who are getting involved or intend to interact with the smart contract to audit the terms, okay? They're there for the public to view on a public blockchain, which improves the transparency. So one can really see what the terms of the contract are before they decide to engage in it, to provide that element of assurance and trust without needing to rely on a centralised intermediary to kind of manage that particular issue. Now, the smart contract process is broken into 4 key sections. So the smart contract itself is built, okay? So we come up with the terms and the conditions, predominantly for the execution, okay? And that's a really important thing, and I'll explore that a little bit in a few moments' time. We then have the events and triggers, and that's what I refer to as the if and then, okay? So certain information would be submitted to inform a smart contract. Okay, once that information reaches the smart contract, it can then execute and commit the terms that have been programmed into it. Okay, the contract then executes and the value of tokens is transferred between entities. And then finally, we have settlement. Okay, so digital assets, as I referred to, such as cryptocurrency, can be automatically transferred between entities who are involved in the smart contract. And this interaction, the execution of the smart contract and the terms, are all recorded on the blockchain, and you can go back in time and check all of that information. So there's no documents going missing, there's no contracts going missing, there's no concerns about one party not understanding the terms and whatever it may be. It's all been made there available. And again, we're not relying on a central body between these two parties to manage that transaction, which in turn could essentially lower the transaction costs, the transfer, even speed up the settlement time for interactions between parties. But let's get practical, okay? In many respects, contracts themselves can be very, very complicated, particularly in the real estate space. So what we're finding, particularly here in Australia, is that we have paper-based contracts in the traditional sense, setting out the legal agreement. But the smart contracts become responsible for implementing the key executable aspects of the contract themselves. Okay, so we really need to sort of think about how it's going to work in the real world. So we're certainly not 100% with smart contracts, but it is bringing together this idea of off-chain and on-chain contract management to deliver this transfer of assets and trust between two particular parties. The next idea is digital tokens, and this is where it really gets fun, and this is where it can really come to life. What we're able to do now, certainly with blockchain, is create digital tokens to represent real-world assets. So it could be cars, houses, or even computers. And so certainly with cars, it could be the VIN or the registration number. With a house, it could be land titles that are recorded and attached directly to digital tokens. We also can have things such as intangible assets, which could be property rights, identification, reputation, and of course licenses. And one space which is certainly seeing a lot of the idea of intangible assets being represented by way of digital tokens is intellectual property, and even music to a certain degree as well. We can have fungible or non-fungible depending on the use case. So ERC20 tokens, which you see up there on the top right, are all exactly the same. Okay, so essentially they're all generic. But then we might have, say, non-fungible, which are unique tokens, which we represent, say, in ERC721 tokens, which are unique, okay? So land titles themselves are unique. Property rights can be unique, things like that. Now, I've chosen these three particular tokens, and they're born out of the Ethereum blockchain. Ethereum is a protocol-based blockchain, which allows for smart contracts and, of course, digital tokens. It's a protocol blockchain, but it's not the only one, but it was one of the first, and it's one of the most established, with certainly programming and applications being built on it at the moment. Now, what's special about the ERC721 token is it includes what we call a metadata layer. So when creating a digital token, what we're able to do is include all subsequent information about a particular asset to it. So, who does it belong to? And we'll have a bit of a look at, say, a property token, which we might generate by way of ERC721 later on, but it might include all subsequent information such as planning permits, drainage diagrams, all of that kind of information there as well. Then finally, we have the ERC1404 token, and this is one of the newest ones. And what's really exciting about this is the application with respect to ensuring authorisation, but also rights, okay, and being able to transfer between Party A and Party B. Here in Australia, we have a lot of regulatory measures which control the transfer of financial instruments and property instruments between multiple parties. And certainly for one party to be transferred money above, say, $10,000 or shares or property rights or whatever it may be, one thing that they have to go through is what we call an AML and CTF, which is anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism funding identification requirements. Now, this is certainly managed by an authority body to ensure that people are who they say they are. And then say an asset couldn't be transferred to that particular party unless they've met those requirements. With an ERC1404 token, what we'll be able to do is actually program into the digital asset itself to check that that party has actually gone through those checks before a smart contract will execute, before that digital token, which may represent any sort of asset, real world, digital asset, whatever it may be, actually makes its way through to them. So again, it actually removes that requirement for us to have compliance, okay, to have centralised checking, to have compliance checking, authority checking. The digital token itself can actually manage that. So if you do not meet, okay, the authority or compliance requirements to receive this digital token, then it will not transfer across the blockchain from my wallet to yours. So this automation becomes really, really nice, and in turn can improve the efficiency and also trust associated with the transfer of assets. And then finally, as we've touched on a number of times already today, there's no requirement for a central authority or clearinghouse to regulate anything, which in turn should save costs and time and ultimately benefit the end user. Now, the blockchain real estate ecosystem is quite expansive, and I've got a slide up here in front of you now. This is probably about 12 months old, but it's really nice to look at because it gives you an idea of just all the applications that we're seeing. Certainly starting at the top left, we've got big data, down to hospitality and accommodation. We've got marketplaces and portals. We've got peer-to-peer, both rental and purchasing, property management, record keeping, marketing. In the bottom right, property investment, of course, is a very, very big one. News and knowledge, smart cities, and of course events. And all these different firms and startups are implementing the use of blockchain technology to assist in the efficiency and delivery of their very specific real estate service product. So let's have a look at some of the use cases. Certainly transactions is one of them. So in a generic transaction of let's say a house or an apartment between two particular parties, we have numerous taxes and transaction costs. And a lot of those come from middlemen and these inefficiencies such as banks and conveyancers and so on and so forth. And some of the stakeholders involved, as I said, we've got banks, we've got real estate agents, we've got the vendors, buyers, renters, and of course the government, and land titles officers and things like that. The diagram up on the right is a very basic diagram, which is a contract of sale, which is, say, underwritten by a smart contract. Now, inside that smart contract, we might have three key elements that we need to kind of see built into it. The first might be a document checklist. And as part of that document checklist, we could have, say, identification requirements. We could ensure that the land title is true and correct. We could ensure that there's no caveats on that particular piece of land, there's no finance attached to it, so on and so forth. We could have a digital signature requirement, and then finally an actual automated escrow built into that smart contract and in turn contract of sale. So what that means is that when the deposit is submitted to the smart contract by the user or the buyer, okay, the vendor is then able to submit the asset title. The deposit then gets released to the vendor, and then the token asset representing that asset title is then released to the user. You'd be able to share that contract of sale, the smart contract, with a financial planner, an accountant, a solicitor, a conveyancer, as you need, but also your bank and finance broker as required, who in turn could finally release finance to the vendor. Now, this isn't outside a lot of what's going on, but what it does do is demonstrate some of the applications with respect to smart contracts in really basic real estate transactions. Property listings is another big one. So I'm doing a lot of work in valuation, okay, and certainly being able to have true and correct information with respect to real estate assets, particularly in the residential space, can be quite difficult. And it can become quite a laborious process. Visiting individual sites, looking at comparable sales, making sure the information that you've got is up to date, true and comparable, okay? And it can be quite difficult if you don't have recent sales on whatever it may be, or that information is stored on different servers and different research houses. So collating that to come up with a true and accurate figure can be quite difficult. But what we might be able to do, potentially using, say, the ERC721 token, which we looked at a little bit earlier on, is create an asset token, okay? Now, in that metadata layer, we could include all the information about that particular real estate asset or property, such as the identity verification, the contract of sale. Here in Victoria, we have what we call a Section 32 vendor statement, which details all the information about the asset. We might have a drainage diagram, a pest and building inspection report, and then finally the evaluation report. And that could all be attached to that digital asset token. And then as that transfers between entities over a 5-year, 10-year, 15, over the lifetime of that asset, that information gets taken with it the whole way through and gets added to each and every time. So that way you've really got the provenance and the history of that particular asset. Land titles is another really, really big space where we're seeing a lot of stuff happening, okay? Now, here in Australia, it's a little bit different because we actually operate under the Torrens system. We're actually moving to a full 100% digital land title record keeping system at the moment. It's not blockchain, but it is digital record keeping system for land titles. And we've got a very, very robust system. So the advantages of applying blockchain technology to our land title system is limited in that it may improve efficiency to a certain degree, but there are a lot of issues with respect to trust because we've got very good authority and governing bodies. But in other parts of the world, such as Africa or where they don't have authority bodies who manage land titles as effectively as they do here in Australia, there could be a real advantage to have, say, a public blockchain which records the information attached to ownership and property and real estate assets in a public way that's immutable, okay, that cannot be changed, okay, so which is, of course, is transparent and searchable. And one thing, of course, that it does is it identifies and records a chain of ownership right back to the very beginning. Up there on the left, I've got an image of a startup called Colombo, who's actually been successful in using blockchain technology to recording land titles over in the Netherlands. They're doing some work with the Land Registry Services here in New South Wales, Australia. Okay, and also doing a similar thing where they're going to be using blockchain technology to record land titles and land title ownership over here in Australia. So that's, again, another space where we're seeing blockchain technology applied to real estate. Document and reputation management, of course, is a very big one as well. Reputation management, again, is an example of an intangible asset that could be represented by way of a digital token. When it comes to rental processes, certainly what happens is landlords or rental agents will be required to do due diligence on potential renters. So they might check their credit, they'd call up their employers to make sure that they are getting paid. They look at their previous rental history, all this kind of information to ensure that they are going to be a good tenant. Okay, now this process can take anywhere from 1 day to 3 days to 2 weeks, depending on how efficient they are with providing that information. But what if there was a way to assign that reputation and all of that information to a digital token, or record that information on the blockchain and then provide that information to a letting agency? That way they'd actually have a true and immediate representation of what your reputation is like, and therefore be able to speed up that process of perhaps renting that particular asset out to you. The same sort of thing could be said for finances, okay, with respect to lending. So having your credit score, how effective have you been at paying stuff back in the past? Do you have any assets that you're able to liquidate in the event of defaulting on the loan, things like that. So there's advantages to storing that information and aggregating it on the blockchain. There's been concerns certainly previously about having all that information together because of hacking and so on and so forth, but the way that blockchains are designed, with private keys and so on and so forth, one can trust in the immutability and certainly the security of them, assuming of course that they're being designed and built appropriately. Here in Australia, there was a proof of concept put together by some serious corporate entities. Okay, ANZ, who's one of Australia's top 4 banks, IBM, who I'm sure you all know, Scentre Group, who's a giant asset management and property development company, and Westpac, who's again in the top 4 banks of Australia, came together to do a proof of concept with respect to the application of blockchain in the commercial leasing space. And they identified 3 key shortfalls at the moment, and they were physical document management, tracking and reporting, and lack of standardisation. And by applying blockchain record-keeping technology, they identified that essentially blockchain could balance the competing needs of transparency and confidentiality, and ultimately improve that process when it came to commercial leasing, okay? In turn, lowering the costs, making it more efficient and operationally more successful. Up here, I have a bit of a strange slide, certainly at face value. And I was lucky enough to go to Shanghai last year as the Shanghai China Blockchain Summit. And the gentleman that you can see next to me there, he actually won a hackathon. Okay, now the hackathon was a real estate-based blockchain project that they had to come up with on the day. And what they did is they applied blockchain technology to a commercial building. Now, a couple of applications came out of this particular hackathon, if you will, out of their business model. And the first was using digital tokens to represent floor space inside a commercial building. So per square metre. So if you're a tenant, you might be assigned digital tokens that represent what floor you're on, what square meterage of that particular building that you have access to. That's a very kind of generic, standard record-keeping system, an application of blockchain technology, of course. But what was really exciting is that, and this is something else that you're able to do with this technology, is they created their own ecosystem and they created their own economy within this particular building. And what they did is they created what they called, say, commercial coins. Okay, so commercial building coins specific to this particular real estate asset. So let's assume it was a 35-storey building and you had 4 toilets on every one of those stories. Now, managing the custodians and the cleaners, ensuring that all of those toilets got cleaned, is a very, very big job. But what if there was a way to incentivise people, custodians, to ensure that those bathrooms are actually cleaned on a regular basis? So they came up with this idea of creating a digital currency in coins that were attached to the bathrooms in every one of the floors of this particular building. And so a cleaner would go in, scan the QR code once they've cleaned everything, okay, and then they would leave. Now, every 3 hours, a coin would be assigned to that particular bathroom. So if it hadn't been cleaned for 3 hours, another coin would be attached to it, and so on and so forth. And the cleaners or custodians would be able to get on their application on their phone and identify bathrooms within the building that had more than one coin on them. So that way they'd be incentivised to get to that floor, get to that bathroom and pick up, say, 2 coins instead of 1, and so on and so forth. And it might be after a certain amount of hours, 3 coins, 4 coins, 5 coins actually accumulate on this particular asset or toilet or bathroom or whatever it was. So it incentivises them to get on over to that particular asset and clean it. Now, these coins could be used for the purposes of, say, buying a coffee in the lobby, or they could be assigned to the HR manager for performance incentives and so on and so forth. So what we're able to do with blockchain, it gives us that flexibility to create an ecosystem that incentivises. We can create our own economies, and we've got the flexibility to do that. Now, quite often at this particular part of this presentation, I get asked the question, well, what stops them from just scanning the QR code and picking up those coins and heading on their way? And really, absolutely nothing. And it's a really nice time to bring up this idea that blockchain doesn't operate in a vacuum by itself, and certainly doesn't operate in a vacuum by itself with respect to real estate either. A couple of other concepts that are really important is this idea of IoT, so Internet of Things, big data and artificial intelligence. Okay, so in this particular case, we might have an IoT device that ensures that the actual toilet has been cleaned or the bathroom has been cleaned. It might take a photo, do a scan, whatever it may be. And then, of course, then we have artificial intelligence scanning data to ensure that there isn't any particular sort of anomalies in the information that is in fact being committed to the blockchain. Because a blockchain, of course, is only going to be as good as the information that's submitted to it. So if we have humans submitting information to a blockchain, we have to trust that the information that they're submitting is in fact true and correct. But in other cases, we can have IoT devices to do that for us. Another application, of course, is crowdfunding and fractionalisation. And what we're able to do here is obviously break assets into small pieces. And depending on the structure in which you do that, you might create a unit trust, depending on your regulatory environment. Actually, successfully here in Australia, just in South Australia, we've actually broken land titles into fractions or smaller pieces and are recording those fractions or pieces of that particular land title into digital assets and recording them on the blockchain. The advantage of breaking real estate into small pieces is potentially can improve the liquidity, okay, and sellability and transfer of real estate assets. It can provide alternate means of capital raising. It can lower the barrier of entry to real estate markets. And tokens can also be programmed and designed to manage yield and dividend payments automatically. So let's assume everybody in the audience, including myself, we all decided to crowdfund and purchase a real estate asset ourselves. We would be issued, say, with digital tokens that represent our share of ownership. And included in that would also manage our distribution. So if, for example, we owned 5% of that particular asset, monthly yield distributions would automatically be sent to us, 5% thereof, so on and so forth, so depending on your share. And of course, having this on a blockchain, which might be public or semi-public or private, which we could certainly myself and us involved in the audience today could see, there'd be that element of transparency and trust, and we'd know who has, what share and what's being distributed to them each and every month. And that way, there's an element of assurance. And there's a real advantage to this, particularly if we're doing it at an international perspective. So blockchain certainly has potential to solve or contribute towards solving things such as database requirements, multiple parties involved in real estate transactions, elements of trust, improve elements of trust, of course, inefficiency by middlemen or middlewomen, capital requirements, liquidity, and of course, document management. That's my information up there. So if you've got any questions sort of outside of today, and look, I'm sure a number will pop up. And I think what I'd like to see come out of today is take away this idea of blockchain, do some reading, get on down that rabbit hole and really explore, I think where you could apply blockchain to what's going on, in your real estate applications day to day. It could be from valuation, it could be from investments, it could even be for construction, whatever it may be. But there's a whole myriad of applications. It's really the beginning, and there's just so much opportunity for us out there.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. We have received a couple of questions, but with the limited time period, we have picked only one. Mr. Lynch, the problem that the audience has raised is what are the risks associated with introducing blockchain technology to the real estate industry and how to mitigate them?
Yeah, sure. There are so the question is, what are the risks associated with introducing blockchain technology to the real estate industry? Well, certainly, I suppose one of the foremost risks really is that the technology isn't quite ready. Okay, if the technology isn't completed in full, particularly with real estate assets, when we're talking hundreds of thousands up to millions, multi-million dollars, you really want to be sure that the technology is tried, true, and tested, and it really is just the very beginning. So that certainly is one of the risks. Secondary to that is blockchain technology relies on this idea of private keys, okay, and people actually maintaining custody of their own particular assets. Again, going back to the Bitcoin example, there's been a real issue. So there will only be, say, 21 million Bitcoins ever mined, okay? But they reckon, well, the numbers are that, say, 4 to 5 million of them have already been lost because people have lost their private keys, which is essentially your password to your unique address. And one of the real issues, particularly with real estate, is if you had, say, land titles or property rights inside your digital wallet and you lost the private key and you had no, then you may not be able to access them again in the future, which is a real concern. And this is where this idea of custody or custodian management with respect to blockchain is coming in. There's actually been a platform launched in the United States of America called BACT, which is B-A-K-T. And what they do is they provide custody services for holding private keys so that people don't lose access to their digital wallets. So there's certainly a couple of risks. Other risks, of course, are the regulatory side there as well. So, of course, there's a broad range of applications that one could use blockchain for in real estate. But you have to make sure that they can operate successfully within a regulatory environment that's specific to your particular jurisdiction. So here in Australia, for example, for us to, say, fractionalise real estate and break it down into small pieces, it might be that we need to work under the auspice of a financial services framework and pick up, say, an Australian financial services licence. And, say, property itself, direct property, then moves from being, say, a standard asset into what we classify as a financial services asset. So there's certainly regulatory concerns there as well. So we've got the technology, okay, is a risk. The custodian or custody of private keys is a risk. And then, of course, the regulatory application space is also another risk.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Thank you for joining with us today. Next, we have another interesting presentation. For that, please welcome Dr. Jagat Munasinghe.
So, the task given to me is to talk about these the urban development authorities, the planning interventions, which will have an impact on this real estate and our valuation. So tell you very frankly, I know very little about this valuation and also real estate. I'm not a guy from real estate background. So and also at the same time, I know that most of the things that I'm talking here may be a bit irrelevant to you, relevant in some ways, but not very relevant in that way, right? But in a way, it's good because, I mean, you have been listening to all those kind of about this valuation, real estate, and the blockchain technology in real estate, and also about this pop tech and everything. So maybe this may be a bit of a break for you to kind of refresh yourself. But anyway, this will have impact on your valuation matters as well in future. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about two things that, okay, when I was invited to kind of talk to you, that's the topic given to me is about this future of the development in Sri Lanka, role of planning and planned interventions, which is a kind of a range of things, starting from national level things to the kind of local micro level things, right? So, but since I'm heading two different organizations, one is the National Physical Planning Department, which involves in planning for the future of this country at the national level, and at the same time, Urban Development Authority, which deals with the local to micro level planning in this urban areas in Sri Lanka. So I picked two topics from this national level and one to the micro level, that is in local level, right? So let me focus upon to those things, but there are a lot of things in between, which I will not talk about today. This National Physical Plan, I believe most of you know about it already because this became a Gazette notification on the 12th of June. And all development activities, physical development activities in Sri Lanka will be based upon this National Physical Plan from now onwards. And therefore, better to know about it. I will not go into details again because as I said, the time has already gone because the presentation has about 20 odd slides. But just to take your attention to the focus, why we need a national plan. Of course, we have some developmental needs. These are kind of essential things. We need more employment opportunities, improved quality of life and pleasant living environment. And also at the same time, in terms of economics, we need some steady growth in the economy, which was mentioned as 2% for the last number of years by Professor Sampath in the morning. But our intention is to make it 6% if we want to be a developed nation by 2030. So that is the kind of expected rate. So, and also for that, we need some investments and also balanced development throughout the island. These are expectations if we want to become a developed nation by 2030. The level of leaving this middle income status of the country. So intention of the National Physical Plan is to facilitate all these aspects at the same time to have the sustainable development and also conservation aspects of our culture, heritage and all that, right? So I go a little faster from this point onwards because they have done a large kind of extent of studies, a kind of a series of studies on different aspects of this geography and the climate and the land suitability and the evaluation and all that, right? Passing all that also about this population distribution patterns and the education levels and the different levels of education attainment which are potential to the country because human resource also is taken as one of the most important kind of resource for this development, and also about this unemployment and the employment rates in the country in different districts and also their differences in different districts, and also their relationship with that, with the level of education attainment. I would like to kind of stop here for a while. You can see what is shown. There's a bit of distortion in the picture, but you understand what the shape of Sri Lanka is, but it's not exactly this. It's a kind of distorted picture, right? But anyway, it's not my fault anyway, right? So this picture shows there are the picture to your right-hand side is the unemployment rate in the country, the difference, I mean, the change of unemployment rate between two census years, 2001 and 2012, right? Which indicates this unemployment rate has gone up in certain places in Sri Lanka. You can see where it is in dark red color. The blue ones are the areas where the unemployment rate has gone down, right? And also at the same time, compare it with this level of higher education attainment, right? So Mr. Jayewardenepura was talking about this higher education a little bit about in his presentation. So you can see the darker colors in the map that's given to your left-hand side is about this, the level of education attainment, especially in tertiary education. Now you can compare these two, the tertiary education and the level of unemployment, which shows very well. So the type of unemployment that we have educated unemployment, meaning majority of the people we have in Sri Lanka, those who are unemployed and uneducated, they have those who have got their tertiary education mostly and still find unemployment. Right? It's not the conventional uneducated unemployment, right? Which shows the potential as well. While it's a problem, it shows us potential because we have educated youth, those who can be trained, those who can be put into kind of productive new sectors, not the conventional sectors. Like for example, estate development, maybe real estate development, maybe IT, the other kind of all these things that we talked about in technology. So that is something that we need in the country today, which is a clear indication of we have the potential for that, right? Human resources ready for that. Then about this urbanization, second aspect. So conventionally it is told that Sri Lanka is a less urbanized country. According to the statistics, it is 18.2%, right? Which is a very low figure, but is that true? This is something that we are concerned about. We undertook a research to see whether it is the truth. And we found, which is not the case, because in terms of three aspects, for example, when any person becomes urban, in terms of his accessibility to urban facilities, like for example, pipe-borne water supply, electricity from the main grid, and the urban transportation facilities, access to urban other facilities, and also urban lifestyles. the type of employment that they are in, and the type of lifestyle that they lead in within their day-to-day life, and also urban aspirations, especially this education, what kind of sector that they would like to have their employment, right? So all that shows, even though they live in so-called rural areas which are not classified as urban areas, their lifestyles are very much urban, right? So in that manner, we got the same information of the Census and Statistics Department, and we did an analysis, and we found this is the real picture, which shows about 0.5% of the Sri Lankans are more than 90% urban in all means, right? And about 2%, 2.2%, which is given the third column, are more than 80% urban. And about 13% are more than 60% urban, and 26% are more than 50% urban, and about 42% are more than 40% urban. But mind, this is an evolving thing. And also look at the kind of land extent that is occupied by them. And you can see the alarming picture is, you can see a big difference, big jump between this 30 to 50%, right? Which counts about 80% of the population, cumulative population, 85% of the cumulative population, who are living in an area about 45%, about half of the country's residential area. What does that mean? I believe that the picture is clear to you if I show it like this in a graph, which shows about more than 30% of the people, 40% of the people are more than 30% urban, but in next 10 years' time, it's very likely that we will have a situation like this, meaning that more than 50% of the people in Sri Lanka will be more than 60% urban. Maybe we can still call those areas rural areas, but they will be having all urban facilities, they will be having urban lifestyle, they will be having urban aspirations. In that way, so we will be an urban country very soon. So I don't know how will it affect your valuation and your kind of the real estate markets and all that, but still we can think about it. When we look at that, the people, those who are more than 70% urban, are living in areas. The map to your right-hand side is giving that the map that is given to your left-hand side is are the areas which are designated urban areas, right? If the Census Department takes into account about the urban population, they will be looking at that. But this figure given to your right-hand side is a real picture situation in the ground level, where people more than 70% urban, and people, those who are more than 60% urban, you can see how it is. But in the next 20 years, it's very likely we will have this cohort will be going up, and you will find the situation like this. So even though people will be living in so-called rural areas, they will be urban. So we are leading to an urban country. This is what I wanted to kind of highlight. And this is also something that we have taken into account in preparation of National Physical Plan, right? So then I will skip these things because these are the main policies that we have taken into account about the conservation aspects of these natural resources and the water bodies and all that. Then about this livability, the areas which are best for the human development, human settlements in future. The third policy is about this optimization of the available resources and available infrastructure without investing more on new infrastructure, mega-scale infrastructure, making use of this what's available to us, right? Then about this resources which have not been explored so far, as I told you about this human resource and also some of the other potential like natural beauty and all this kind of which can be used for tourism and all these aspects, and also some of the earth resources as well, right? With all that, this is the National Physical Plan that we have prepared, right? So in that, you may find the future urban trends in Sri Lanka, which will be confined to certain areas. Especially, one of the main features is this conservation aspects. I believe when you do your valuations, you take this into account about this. If those areas are designated as kind of conserved areas, the valuation naturally goes down. That's how the real estate market works, I believe. So legally, these will be declared as conserved areas. Therefore, definitely it will affect the value of these lands in terms of the monetary value. I believe that at this case, right? As I said, I'm not an expert, but I believe that you can endorse that, right? Okay. The second one is about these urban areas, right? So we have identified two, the main urban areas. First one is this main conurbation between Colombo and Trincomalee, main corridor, which is the most potential location. And our expectation is this will be the kind of main catalyst or the main kind of attraction for urban development activities in next 10 years, right? And most of the urban activities, most of the infrastructure, most of the investments will be kind of directed to this conurbation, starting from Colombo to Dambulla first and then to Trincomalee, right? Then parallel to that, we are defined three other corridors, one from Jaffna to Kilinochchi in the north, and Matiklo to Ampara in the east, and there's another one from Gaul to Tissamaharam in the south, and two more metro regions, one in Anuradhapura and the other one is in Kandy. Right. With that, there will be 9 service centers. They're not big cities, but main service centers located in Mana, Mullathiyuv, Vavuniya, Puttlam, Ampara, this is Polonnaruwa, Mahiyangana, Vallavaya, Nuvarelli and Ratnapura. These are the locations identified for the main service center. So you might find some of the importance of some of the main cities because of their locations and because of their sensitivity, the environmental sensitivity, the importance will be gone down. Like for example, Badulla, that will be will not be considered as potential location for more investments, right? At the same time, our intention is to make sure that the available infrastructure will be utilized to the best rather than investing on new infrastructure, right? Because we have, as somebody said in the morning, Sri Lanka, we have very good road network, whereas they are not maintained very well. That's a different matter, but we have a very good road network which covers the whole country very. One of the countries, it is one of the countries in this region which has a very good road infrastructure, right? At the same time, the population distribution in future will be, expectation is this, and also our investment in future will be directed mainly towards these main urban centers. Even as of now, the Ministry of Megapolis and Western Development has a strategic cities development project which has identified picked cities out of this National Physical Plan, right? So the main investment points will be there. And at the same time, the future infrastructure developments also will be concentrated to what is shown here. And I will not take much time because all this information is available in the Urban Development Authority website and also the government printers website. You can have access to them. But something that I wanted to show you is the present trends of development. Once we, even before we make it a public document, I mean, we had several public consultations, we had several kind of public sessions like this, which is shown to these investors, shown to the kind of general public, and the development trends as of now. So recently we have undertaken research in the Urban Development Authority Research Unit to find now the present trends of development, right? The number of building applications received for land subdivision and also for the building construction, starting from more than kind of 4,000 square feet, 400 square meters, up to about 25,000 square meters, right? So this is the trend pattern that we have seen. Okay, mainly it's in Colombo, true enough, but you can see the pattern how it goes, right? And the number of applications in terms of percentages, we can find mainly that is coming from the first in Colombo metropolitan region, right? Second is starting from this Colombo to Katunayak area, Gurunagal area. Then third is from Kurunagal to Anuradhapura. Then Colombo to Puttlam, Matra to Hambantota, then Trincomalee, then Batiklo area. So these are the 7 areas where you find the most number of applications for development activities are coming in for the last 2 years. You can compare that with this, the National Physical Plan. It's very much in line with that, which shows these 10 patterns are set by this plan, and the plan also, it is two-way process. The plan also has taken into account about the development patterns in the country and the potentials, as well as the plan has set a trend so that the developments will be following the same pattern, right? Okay. With that, I leave this aspect about the national level planning intervention in future. There are a lot more to be talked about, but since the time is limited, I just jump into this kind of micro level thing that is about this Urban Development Authorities thing. So if you go to this Urban Development Authorities website today, you find it's a kind of quite a dynamic website is available for us today. And it has given details about 50 development plans that covers about 50 development areas for 50 urban areas in Sri Lanka, mainly the Colombo and Sri Jayewardenepura area, which is covering about 15 local authority areas, right? New details and new kind of development planning approach has been taken by the Urban Development Authority very recently. And with that, which matters to you mostly is about this development potential, which affects the valuation, I believe, right? So we have given up this FAR and those kind of the conventional kind of planning approach, and we have now come into a density-based zoning approach, which was not there in the UDA planning some time back. And the reason is that we want to have more proactive mechanism for the implementation of development plans. At the same time, a flexible system for the developers to kind of come up with more investment and more potential for development, and also some kind of logical reasoning behind this, why the things have been decided like that, right? Then, one of the concepts, we have introduced two concepts. The first one is the zone factor, which will be quite new to you, and also you will come to know that very soon, because the plans, development plans have become gazetted documents by now, they are available for the public view now. But this regulations part will be gazetted at the end of this month. In that, you will come across these two new concepts coming in, right? First one is the zone factor, which talks about the development density of a particular area based on 4 aspects. First one is about the urban form that is expected in that area. Second one is about the sensitivity in terms of environment kind of aspects, and also about the cultural aspects of the area. Then the available infrastructure, the same approach that we had in the National Physical Plan, as I said, we do not want to have more and more infrastructure to be built, but we want to make use of the ones that is available to the optimum level, right? So that is the infrastructure. Third one is about the carrying capacity of certain locations. With all that, I'll show you about some of the examples that we have done it. So the basically determining of this the zone factor is based on a process which involves this development potential, and also this carrying capacity of the area in terms of its sensitivity, and also the population attraction to that area, residential, and also the commuter populations. Then total permissible flow area is depending on this first, second, and the third aspects, as I said, right? So just to look at in pictures, this is the urban form, how it has been taken into account. Then about the carrying capacity analysis of the certain locations, because the plans have been developed with a kind of long process of kind of studies. So many studies that's involved in it. So livability and the development potential in certain parts, the development pressure taken into account, and the composite map shows the development potential in certain locations. Accordingly, the valuations also may depend on the lands of these areas. But mainly, the concept is the zone factor. Simply, it's this permissible flow area for a given zone divided by the denominator is available land area, right? So it's a simple concept, but derived out of a kind of a series of studies done on that over a period of 2 years or so, right? So you might come across a table like this in new plans, new development plans coming in, which shows the zone factors in certain locations it will be more than 4, and there will be ranges starting from 3 to 4, 2 to 3, like that it goes on like that. If it's less than 0.5, that means the least developable area, right? Taking into account all what was discussed little while ago, right? Then you'll get a map like this for the Colombo, right? The same colors, color codes will be uniform. The same color codes you will find in the map as well. Accordingly, you can find out which areas have the better potential for development, which areas have the less potential for development, right? So the zone factor decides the development potential of the location. So accordingly, the development possibilities, so for the valuation, the value of the lands will be depending on that, right? So that's about this. And the second concept is the fair share. That is about the set zone factor, that means development potential, how it can be distributed among individual land plots. Now it also depends on the extent of the land, and also about this location of the land in terms of the road frontage, and also the road the width. Then there's another aspect that we looked into, because we wanted to encourage people to have more and more kind of land pooled and kind of amalgamations, rather than developing smaller kind of plots of land. So in order to encourage that, this new concept encourages a kind of a exponential factor, where people, those who have smaller lands, will get less potential, less permissible flow area, whereas when your land extents is larger, you have a bigger land extent, then you will get more potential for development, more floor spaces be allowed, right? So there's a formula that is introduced here. So the chart shows how the development potential goes up with that. And the fair share is calculated based on this land extent, as I said, but it's factored, that means powered with a factor. And also this road development, the road width and the road frontage. And finally, you will come across a formula like this. Even though the formula is a bit of kind of messy, it's a kind of a simple concept. It's not a big kind of a messy thing, right? So when you get used to that, you may find it gives you a kind of a picture as to what the development potential of any land. Our intention is to make sure that when you go to the UDA website, you will have just even now, you have this kind of a development application process in that. When you give your inputs, you'll get an output. You give the address of the land and the extent of the land and the name of the road, and you will get the permissible flow space, right? So it's a kind of a direct process if you are not very much kind of interested in calculations. Our intention is to give that in the website. So what is required from you is an input in terms of the land extent, the address of the land, the width of the road, and the road frontage. That's it. It will automatically give you the development possibility. That means the permissible flow area, which will matter for your valuation, right? So that is our intention. We are in the process of making it. Even now, the UDA, most of the activities are fully automated. We only accept this online applications. So this will be part of that. And also we introduce this green building application and everything as part of it, right? So when you have, in addition to this, when you go for green buildings, that means if your developer wants to go for green building certification, if it's silver level, if you promise to deliver silver level certification rating for your building, you'll get an additional 5% of floor space, right? If you go for gold or platinum, then you'll be given 10% additional floor space, because that can be compensated with other aspects in the development, right? So that is how it is rated. Now you'll get that very soon, right? So that's how I made it. Kind of, I believe I have made it within the less than the given time. It's okay, fine. Anyway, but all these details are available in our website, Urban Development Authority website, www.uda.gov.lk. So, but if you have any other information that is required for you, again, you can either obtain from this website, or else I will be available for a while here. But if you have any questions, of course, I'm ready to answer. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Jagat Munasinghe, the Chairman of Urban Development and Authority, Sri Lanka. I'm sure you all have heard about the Colombo Light Rail Transit Project. So without further ado, let me invite then the Senior Project Specialist, JICA Sri Lanka, Mrs. Namal Ralampanawa.
Thank you. Many of you have probably heard about the Malabar Fort Light Rail Line, the project already. For those of you who haven't, we have left some leaflets on the tables. The project owner, the Ministry of Megapolis, the project director is here. He will speak about the project itself. So I will just quickly take 5 or 6 minutes of your time to explain the boring part about how it's going to be financed. So essentially, the Malabar Fort LRT project is going to be financed, or it is financed through official development assistance from the Japan International Cooperation Agency. The slide shows you the placement of JICA among the other big 3 ODA providers. So what is official development assistance as opposed to private credit or export credit? In order to be categorized as ODA, it has to meet 3 criteria. It's provided to governments or government agencies. It's for promotion of economic development and welfare. And it should have concessional terms which should include a grant element of at least 25%. So JICA's ODA comes mainly in 3 instruments: technical cooperation, grant, and loan. For the first 2, the grant element is 100%. For the loans, of course, it's less, but to be classified as ODA, it should be over 25%. The external debt profile of Sri Lanka is shown there. It's not very clear, but the 10% red from Japan in JPY, these are basically all JICA loans. So the grant element of 25% in a loan comes through the very low interest rates and the long tenor. So the rates here are for lower middle income countries. Several speakers before talked about the middle income country level. Actually, we classify it into 2, lower middle income and upper middle income. Sri Lanka has been in the lower middle income category for several years now. And this year, from June, we graduated to upper middle income country. But these concessionary terms apply also in upper middle income country status. So we are at the lower end of upper middle income status now. It's going to take us some years to go to the higher end to be a developed country. So until then, at least from the ODA providers, this range of interest rates are available. So the lowest interest rate or the most concessional of JICA's loan types is what we call STEP. It's our only tied loan instrument. The interest rates are 0.1%, that's for civil works, and it's 0.01% for consultancy services. It's a 40 years repayment with 12 years grace. That's the loan type that is going to be provided for the LRT project. The STEP loans are only provided for those projects which intend to use specific Japanese technology. So in order to facilitate that technology transfer, the bid eligibility is limited to Japanese companies or Japan-Sri Lanka joint ventures. So basically, the loan will finance all the direct capital expenditure of the project, including engineering services, civil works, and rolling stock equipment. So why is the project being financed through ODA, or why should it be? It's because the ODA loans can play several roles that private finance cannot. So firstly, to support economically viable public investment. So these are economically viable, but not necessarily financially viable. In this case, the ODA loans can be utilized to take the high capital costs and risks, which are prohibitive for private finance. So the best example from JICA's portfolio for this is the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation. JICA has been financing this for the last couple of decades throughout its inception to expansion. It's one of the most successful public transport projects in the world today. Secondly, for catalyzing downstream investment, for bearing the cost through public investment at initial stage, to provide the foundation for subsequent commercially viable private investment. The best example for this is Colombo Port, where UCT, JCT, and QEQ were developed by JICA loans, initially setting the foundation for private investment for SAGT. Then thirdly, financing sub-sovereign entities. So usually JICA loans are provided directly to governments, but in the case of financially sound public entities, such as the ASL, we are able to provide direct loans backed by a government guarantee. Then fourthly, leveling the playing field in 2 ways. For the citizens, by contributing to projects that reduce socioeconomic disparities. And secondly, for the project owner, which is the government, leveling the playing field by taking the high risks of first-time projects like the Southern Expressway and like the LRT now. These are first-time projects and a lot of unknowns. So by using the ODA loans, it's easier for the governments to mitigate risks and then use that lessons learned for optimizing the expansions and also to secure more competitive financing later for expansions. So all these 4 roles will be potentially useful for the Colombo Light Rail. It's going to be one of the largest public infrastructure projects financed by ODA in Sri Lanka. It's certainly the largest for JICA in Sri Lanka. And will level the playing field by providing equitable mobility and catalyze downstream investment. So how exactly it's going to change the game will be explained by Mr. Chamindaridas.
Thank you very much for the organizing committee to giving me this opportunity to make you aware of one of the biggest projects in Sri Lanka, the Light Rail Transit Project financed by the JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency. So before going ahead with the project, which I am trying my best to interrelate with the real estate, the total project cost is 2.2 billion US, and the portion financed by the JICA is 1.85. But anyone can surprise why this 2.2 billion a big amount. But if you consider the context in Sri Lanka, the total effective cost to the project is 1.375 billion. So the balance is the addition like the price escalation, the interest, and the taxes and everything. So the basic cost of the project is 1.375. Let's see how we can relate the real estate to the project. The key driver of the real estate development, I am going to brief you, taking you through these topics. The witness, the transformation of cities with infrastructure development, impact of infrastructure on real estate prices, the potential development areas by the proposed Colombo Light Rail system, and the already witnessed impact of CLRT on real estate. The key driver, everyone wants to have a nice house. What really matters when you want to buy or build your house or a commercial property? Let's see some of the examples. Here, the facing to the Colombo-Matugama main road, close to Southern Expressway, the access. Close to the high-level road, Mipe. Close to the access to the expressway. What all says? So this is the location. Location where the infrastructure facilities are in place, where the location is convenient to the general public. So the infrastructure, such as the buses, metros, or the train stations, and the highways is of essential importance for day-to-day convenience. Drivers for the real estate investment, the recent study revealed that the most of the people and the public and the private and in overall, the 91% of the public and the private sector, the key contributor or the expectation is the quality of infrastructure. The transportation system has become fundamental to most real estate developments, whether that be commercial, residential, or industrial. So the city's transportation, the urban mobility, tend to signal where the next property hotspot will be. We know, we have many examples in our country. I will explain in the later slides. So historically, this has been road or bridges, but there is increasing evidence to show that investments in mass public transport represents a higher value investment. So the multiple studies indicate that a large positive effect on real estate is associated with high-capacity transit stops, such as metro or light rail. I'll share with you some examples all over the world. This is in Somerville in Boston, where there was a neglected 45-acre land which was later converted to an urban hub. A subway station transformed the area to a neighborhood of housing, offices, and restaurants. This is one of our own examples. In 1984, we didn't have a bridge to cross to Biyagama from Kaduwela. When we were very small, we used the boat to cross the river. So you can imagine, with a small investment from the government constructed the bridge, and we got the New Candy Road, where if you can realize, during 3 decades back, the per perch value in Malabe, Kotalavala, Battaramula, even in Battaramula, was around 5,000 to 10,000. But what happened with the New Candy Road? All the values of the land facing the main road has even gone up to 4 million now. In Malabe, Talahena, the land prices have gone up. If you consider the 5 years back, the prices of the land within the radius of 100 meters was around 500,000 or 600,000. Now it has gone up to 1 million last year. Now within a year or 1.5 years, it has gone up to 1.5 million per perch within the radius of 100 meters from the road. So the practical difficulty in financing mega projects in Sri Lanka comes with the compensation, the land acquisition, because the government itself invests on the projects like Kaduwela Bridge, a very small example. So the government itself invests and the land value goes up. When it comes to the second project where the government wants to invest, the government has to acquire the lands at the cost of 10 times or 15 times higher, because we don't have a mechanism to get the benefit out of the government investment. So the land value capture, in some other countries, they have imposed the taxes on the land selling, or when the government needs to acquire, so they will deduct some percentage or the commission out of it to the investment of the government. So this is one example. So clearly, any sort of big transport infrastructure program can act as a huge stimulus for the development of an area. Let's see impact of infrastructure on real estate prices. In some countries, they have the transit premium. Maybe you are very familiar more than me about how this transit premium is included when someone is going to buy a land or sell a land through an agent in some other countries. In the literature review done by US-based Center for Transit-Oriented Development, CTOD, identified that in real estate type, if you consider the office, retail, or residential, the premium range goes up to even up to 150% when it comes to, especially when it comes to the industrial areas. So the Charlotte is a major city and a commercial hub in North Carolina. You can see, when compared across the 4 time periods, housing prices have started to react positively to light rail investment during the operational phase. I'm sharing with you some of the examples. So this is in Ludlow, is a census designated place in Jefferson County, Washington. So you can see the house near the city station has been 340,000 or 88,000 more than the rest of the town, once they have the mega investment on the rail. In the Gold Coast, in Brisbane, overall, the average value increases for real estate within 400 meters of the light rail station was determined to be 7.1%. In Dubai, the potential uplift in the immediate vicinity of the metro stations less than 400 meters could be in the region of 10 to 20%. Our neighbor in Delhi, you can see, according to the studies done in 2007-2008, with the launch of Delhi Metro, which is prime time, On average, land value within the 500 meters of metro line increased by 11.3 and 18.1 respectively. So I'm not going to talk much about the land value increase then. In our project, we have 16 stations coming from Chandrika Kumaratunga Mawatha up to Colombo Fort. That is Malabe, Talahena, Koswatta, Densil Kobbakaduwa Mawatha, then the Palantuna Junction, Battaramulla, Rajagiriya, then the Kota Road, then Boralla. This is the image of the Boralla Junction. And then the Lipton Circle, then the St. Joseph's College, then we have the last station at Multimodal Transport Hub. So we have completed the feasibility study in 2017. The detailed study was awarded to a joint venture consortium led by the Oriental Consultants Global. So now we have 18 international experts working with us, preparing the detailed design and the bidding documents, which should be ready for tender by next year, April. So we are planning to commence the construction once the tender-ready documents are tendered and we selected the successful bidders by end of 2020 or early 2021. So the project will be ready for commissioning by end of 2024 and for the commercial operation by early 2025. So this is the proposed development at Boralla. So I will share with you the station area development small video we prepared because we are planning to develop the station area as business models, maybe with the UDA or with some private sector organizations. So this concept, I will share with you one video clip we prepared for the project.
Colombo, the economic hub of Sri Lanka, is gaining the world's attention as a rising metropolis, able to attract flourishing investments. As the available physical space in Colombo becomes more and more scarce, proper utilization of what is still available has become paramount. Public transportation is the nervous system of Colombo, its most vital organ. The newest member to the transportation family, the Colombo Light Rail, poses a golden opportunity for real estate developers and investors. The urban landscape around the 16 stations along the 16-kilometer length of the light rail transit system is expected to transform at a pace no other transport corridor in Sri Lanka has hitherto experienced. Along the proposed route of the Colombo Light Rail, there is immense potential for revitalization for vast stretches of real estate. What seems today to be unappealing and deserted acreage near the proposed stations could be transformed into livable urban centers, complete with sparkling skyscrapers, alluring parks, and other impressive infrastructure. Living amenities like malls, schools, office complexes and public spaces will not only attract the public but also improve the standard of life of the original property owners. The planned station area development along the Colombo Light Rail system is expected to create thousands of employment opportunities through the myriad of new businesses that will be introduced. The Colombo Light Rail, not just another way of travel, but an inspiration to the flourishing city of Colombo.
So these are the already witnessed impacts. It is said that the light rail transit system planned for Sri Lanka capital Colombo could inflate property prices and rents along the route. This is the JLL finding. And you can see, actually, to explain you about my project, at least I need 1 hour, because we have done so much. About 140 engineers are working with us for the project at the moment. And 15 minutes, 12 minutes, I cannot explain the whole project to you. If anyone interested, you can visit the website, that is www.clr.lk. So we have updated all the information about the project and the progress. And at the same time, you can email or you can make your comments to the website. It is accessible. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much. The Project Director, Colombo Light Rail Transit Project, Engineer Chaminda Aryadasa, and Senior Project Specialist, JICA Sri Lanka, Mrs. Nama Kalpanava. Now, with that, I would like to invite our last presenter, guest speaker, Mr. Bhutika Ratnapala, to deliver his presentation on Land Information System for Colombo Municipality area.
Good afternoon. Within 10 minutes, I'll try to conclude my presentation since it is hungry and there's a mouth-watering lunch away from you. So basically, I'm the luckiest person because every presenter did their part, and this is the project that we did for Colombo Municipal Council, and it's basically got kind of a software solution and a visualization to demarcate the locations, identify the locations, and lay the infrastructure to make decisions. So moving ahead, I'll give a simple background of the project, which is the project is a combination of different organizations funded by the Ministry of Municipal, and it's a World Bank supported project, and ICT I'm representing, we are the technical partner. And for the project, the Survey Department, Registrar General Department, and the CMC and Valuation Department, finally the Western Province Revenue Department incorporate handshake with this project to achieve this mark by 2020. We need to uplift our country to the 70th mark in registering property task force. So this is our target, and we are working with all these stakeholders to move our country towards that. And Colombo City is the target audience, target location. So CMC, Colombo Municipality, is the hub that they support to lift this mark. Going forward, as you all aware, this is a GIS, geographical information. So basically, Sri Lanka can be divided into main 2 parts, state lands, that is the crown lands, as well as the private land. So when it comes to the private lands, you can get a lot of information by drilling down it. So basically, the ground is the surface level, and with the spatial information, you can develop a massive database, and by using this information, you can do a lot of miracles. Integrated land management system. As we all aware, land is a primary economic fundamental block. Different organizations own land. Different organizations manage lands. But when it comes to the land management, Sri Lanka, we divided with a lot of diversity with different organizations. This objective is to make a platform to come abroad all the land-related stakeholders into a single platform to manage and share land and property information among organizations. So, Colombo Municipal Council. I would like to thank CMC. They have given tremendous help to make this achievement. As you all aware, Colombo is the commercial city, and residentially it's around 500 residents in Colombo city, and floating another 500. It can be plus minus 1 million daily floating towards Colombo city. And approximately 150,000 land parcels they have identified as assessments, and majority are residentials. So Colombo city divided into 47 administrative wards. So in this project, we have identified this is as the basic location, and previous speaker, the UDA chairman, explained they have kind of zoning. It's also similar to this, same map, same strategy. And we are using a different technique, what we call the land parceling system. So basically, these 150,000 or something, 100 to 150,000 land parcels, we physically demarcate. We map the land parcels on a digital format, and this satellite image converted into this kind of a land parceling system. So based on this, you can kind of approximately get an idea of the shape of the land and the size of the land and where it is located. So the project is basically convert these 47 boards into a land parcel fabric, land information system, to share the related land organizations to put their information on top of this parcel fabric or the land information. Basically, when it comes to the CMC side, they are maintaining a lot of information for a particular land parcel, from like basically plan information, assessment information, and owner's information, etc., etc. As the stepping stone, we started from the Municipal Assessors Department because they are the one who have the information with them, and they are the one who assess the properties annually. So with that starting point, we gradually moved to the other parts of the Municipal Council because they have a rich source of information, and ultimately, they are going to collaborate to one single system by put their all information in visually to this land parcel fabric. Starting with the basic utility information, we overlay all this information. Water department can provide the information, electricity, telecommunication, infrastructure, railway. So everybody can participate, share this information on top of this land parcel. So finally, the survey department, they have tremendous rich information sources. Survey department willing to share their information, maps, all these things with this fabric. But you can see, land registration system. Everybody knows there's an issue with the land registration process. But we are ICTA, we are in the process of digitizing the folios, what you call the Pattiru, to a digital form and link those information with the land parcels. So it will be helpful to transfer information among notaries, lawyers, as well as the valuers to make decisions, to value properties. So the project model, we start with the core part, what we call the Havelock Town, and the survey department provide us the UAV images, more accurate images. And by using that, we first overlay the basic information, mark the land blocks, then the utility information, and identify what are the information that they require. This is the ultimate system, which is every organization can share their information toward this land information parcel fabric, land information system, to enrich, to lift this information model. So ultimately, on your right, you can see different government organizations, private and international community. They can input their information, and from that, we have a NSDI, National Special Infrastructure, developed by ICTA. So it covers the spatial information layer. On top of that, the parcel fabric will be raised on, and from that, you can get a lot of information to the government, private sector, as well as citizens. The system. This is a testing model that we developed. On your right, you can see different layers of information. You can just plug in to this parcel fabric. And there's a query function. Just you can type what you want, and visually, the system, the mapping part will visualize what are the land blocks. You can evaluate the information, and you can just query from basically demographic information, financial information, etc. And also, the system captures the history of the parcel or the particular property. Finally, you can mark street line, building lines, information on top of this parcel fabric. And also, generally, land can be amalgamated or subdivided. The system is also facilitating that facility. and dashboards. A lot of financial information, demographic information you can just pop in. Finally, this is a decision support tool. It's a visual tool everybody can use as a decision making for the researchers to do research and to lift the country to the next level. The previous speaker told about we are in the middle, lower level, so we need to lift our country. So why not start from Colombo? So to conclude my presentations, as I promised, as you can see on your right, this is the Havelock town, and you can link visual information, videos, photographs onto this map, and you can add plans, architecture plans, survey plans, tag with the system, and a lot of other resources like survey department, land registry, and of course UDA, forest, defense, name it. Everybody can come aboard this and link together. And finally, the decision-making tools to decide to use for the decision makers to improve the country towards the goal. Finally, this system is available in all devices, even smartphones, and it can be used field information. And there's another one available, which is the upcoming systems, one from the Registrar General Department, and another one is the second phase of the Colombo Municipal Council, and especially the Valuation Department. In my front, Madam is available, Chief Valuer. So we are working with that mass project with the Valuation Department. I think next year, hopefully, we can demonstrate, ma'am, the system. Same location, same conference. And finally, I'll give a simple explanation, simple idea, simple demonstration what the system is all about within a 1 minute. Okay, this is the real application that we developed. So different layers you can contribute to this map, and also individually you can have different organizations, different part of the body. Individually you can contribute. Suppose if it is the water body, so there's a water body lines and drainage and hydrants and everything, you can mark it. And finally, individually, you can identify the location by using the assessment numbers. So once you type the assessment number, you can just, the system will visualize the location, and this particular land, it consists of many floors. It's an apartment, and once you click a particular land block, it defines the land details, owner information, and assessment information, many other information. Finally, there's image gallery that you can see the images and the certificates, plans, etc. So this is the system that we are working on. And finally, I urge everybody, the land stakeholders and the professionals, to contribute your information, not classified information. You can share public information toward this system and make our country a better location. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jayewardenepura, Director ICTA, for the very relevant and interesting presentation. So now it's time for the question and answer session.
National planning and the local planning, it is very important for our country. Yes, rightly said by you, the land for urban area is very limited. It is the overall in the world, it is less than 1% once you go by the 1 million population or over. Here in Sri Lanka, it is rather different because ours is a small country. And our population density is ever increasing. We are among the highest in the world. So what's your next step? So you have now the national plan and the local plan. How do you combine that one? And what are the kind of effects that we are going to see in near future, perhaps by 2025? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I must say it's not a nice presentation, but although you have praised it. But anyway, it was, I wanted to kind of make it very brief. But as I said, there was a lot of things in between. Like starting from the national plan, our next step would be to transfer them into regional plans. Then the regional plans will have to be translated into local plans. But anyway, now the UDA is now Urban Development Authority, which is the kind of apex body of planning for local areas in Sri Lanka, is preparing their plans, formulating all the development plans now in line with this national physical plan. For example, when we pick up these urban areas for declaration and also for the development, preparation of the development plan, priorities will be taken from this national physical plan. That's how it's been happening for the last 3 to 4 years. And so at the same time, as you said, in Sri, this study, the background studies done for the national physical plan shows us the habitable land in Sri Lanka is, even though we have 66,000 square kilometers, 100 times of Singapore, right? Our habitable area is only 18%. Habitable area is 18%. That means the urban area should be less than that, right? So our intention is to, according to the studies that we have done and our plans, to make the urban areas confined to less than 10%. Less than 10%, right? So meaning that we'll have very compact development, which we believe will be sustainable and also will be kind of very green in that way. And at the same time, will be in terms of infrastructure development also, it will be very economical in that way. So that's why this light rail and highway, the kind of the other kind of infrastructure development is also very important in this. At this instance, the development will be confined to certain areas, which will be less than 10%. That is the intention, right? But in order to get to that, we are already in the process of preparing development plans within the framework given by the National Physical Plan. That's how it's happening now. Thanks.
Right, if you do not have any more questions, we can conclude the session. Before that, we would like to felicitate our dignitaries. A special thanks goes to our respected dignitaries in the industry dialogue session. And as a symbol of respect and gratitude, we would like to felicitate our guest speakers now with a token of appreciation. First, I request Mr. P.W. Senaratna, the Chartered Valuation Surveyor, to receive the token of appreciation, and I invite Mr. Ajit Fernando, Vice President of RICS Sri Lanka Chapter, to hand over the token of appreciation. Next, I invite Dr. Jagat Munasinghe, Chairman, Urban Development Authority, Sri Lanka, to accept the token of appreciation. To give away the token, I invite Mrs. Pushpa Muthukumarna, Chief Valuer, Government Valuation Department, Sri Lanka. Now our next appreciation goes to Engineer Chaminda Aryadasa, and I invite the Vice President of Institute of Valuers of Sri Lanka, Mr. W.D.P. Rupananda. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Upili Pereira, the Conference Chair, to present the token of appreciation to our respected guest speaker from JICA Sri Lanka, the only female presentation today, Mrs. Namal Palapanawa. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Butika Ratnapala, Director ICTA, to come on the stage to accept the token of appreciation. To present the token, I invite Municipal Assessor, Colombo Municipal Council, Sri Lanka, Mr. R.B.N.M. Ratnavira. The next session will be started within in another 30 minutes. And also, I request all the presenters of the academic session to hand over their presentation to Mr. Lasika Munasinghe. Thank you very much.